Pemirsa, awal pekan lalu Metro TV mewawancarai Irsyad Manji, pengarang buku Faith Without Fear yang kini sudah diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Indonesia. Pemikirannya yang kontroversial mengundang tidak hanya pujian namun juga cercaan di dunia internasional. Perempuan kelahiran Uganda yang besar di Kanada ini aktif berkeliling dunia mengkampanyekan pemikiran kritisnya tentang agama Islam. Perbincangan dengan Tommy Cokro dibuka dengan tujuan Irsyad di balik peluncuran bukunya di tanah air.
This book has been published around the world, and Indonesia, I'm so happy to say, is the latest country that has picked it up. The book is called Faith Without Fear, and I am a faithful Muslim, Tommy. And in this book I am saying, look, Islam began as a religion of justice, but it has become corrupted into an ideology of fear. And it is we Muslims who have done much of the corrupting, and therefore only we Muslims who must take the responsibility to fix the problem. And of course I know there are hundreds of millions of Muslims out there who will say and have said this is an un-Islamic, even anti-Islam message. But I respectfully remind them that the Quran contains beautiful passages about taking personal responsibility. It states, God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. This is a call to speak truth to power, no matter who is offended.
Well, so from what you have observed, are you hopeful that Indonesia will become more pluralistic and tolerant society, or you've sensed that Indonesian Muslims are becoming more conservative during the last 10 years of political freedom?
I'm very well aware of the situation on the ground in many parts of Indonesia. Indonesia has an amazing history of religious diversity and ethnic pluralism, 17,000 islands, 300 plus ethnic groups, scores of languages. So the history is there, the precedent is there. But I also know that influences, particularly from Saudi Arabia, have been, very much making their way into Indonesia. So for example, when the mayor of Tangerang insists that students every Friday dress Islamically, what does that actually mean? There is no such thing as Islamic dress. There is Arab dress and Arab tribal customs. And I worry, quite frankly, that too many Muslims in Indonesia today are confusing Arab tribal culture with the faith of Islam. We must separate. We must separate these two things. And why must we separate it? Because Arab tribal culture does not defend diversity. It is actually very much about being uniform and being the same. Whereas, the faith of Islam has a great deal of support for diversity. So if we are interested more in what Allah would like us to do than in what Saudi Arabia would like us to do, then we must remember that pluralism is at the heart of Islam as a faith.
So during your stay here, what are the things that made the most impression on you about Indonesian Muslims?
The youth. Easily the youth. My book launched here in Jakarta a few days ago, and the entire auditorium was packed with young people, students, journalists. They were wanting to discuss, they were wanting to debate, and in particular, they were wanting the inspiration to know that you can be faithful and thoughtful at the same time. This is why I emphasize Islam's own tradition of critical thinking. It is known as ijtihad. And in fact, Tommy, so much of what the West takes for granted as being its culture came from Muslims who practiced ijtihad.
All right, so has it been difficult for you or for a Muslim liberal like you to advocate your idea to the Muslim public when from time to time you've seen these provocative incidents such as the Danish cartoons and also the latest is fitna episode from the Dutch?
Certainly, it makes it difficult, but difficult is not the same as impossible. And I must say that we've never, as Muslims, needed provocations from the West in order to repress the freedoms of Muslims. Let us remember that the 3 out of the 4 successors of the Prophet Muhammad in the early years were assassinated by fellow Muslims. This was before, Geert Wilders. Let's remember that bloody wars of domination have been raging in Islam ever since the Prophet's death. This has happened before Western imperialism, before the State of Israel, before MTV and McDonald's came on the scene. So once again, even as we acknowledge that there are, interventions and interferences from the West, We can't keep pointing fingers only out there. For the sake of honesty, we must also remember that we are partly responsible as Muslims for the corruption that we have done to Islam. This is why we must also take the responsibility to fix the problem.